Alright, it is time for my final read and react. I will be doing basically a podcast on what I learned in mostly the Spires. That's what I focus on the most, but about formative and summative assessments and specifically how that applies to my discipline of mathematics education, and I hope you enjoy. Overall, Spire summarizes the importance of summative and formative assessments in one really concise statement. They say you can't learn without feedback. It's not teaching that causes learning. It's the attempts by the learner to perform that causes learning, dependent upon the quality of the feedback and opportunities to use it. Now, how exactly is this done? Well, specifically for summative assessments, which is what I'm going to be primarily focusing on, we do this through inquiry projects, and Spires defines inquiry projects as where the student is able to examine a concept, analyze text, synthesize that information, and then share the findings, allowing the teacher to assess literary practices within an authentic context. But even further, why does this work? Well, Spires tells us that previous research has shown that assessing student skills in decontextualized ways can be biased against students who are not well-versed in academic language. My interpretation of this quote is that tests or exams where students are mainly required to memorize information and apply it to, say, like a multiple choice question exam, aren't the best way to assess their knowledge. Instead of just one snapshot of a student's understanding, we get multiple views of how they're doing through something like a summative assessment. While I do believe there is a time and place for the type of exam I mentioned earlier, I believe a learning environment that relies more heavily on inquiry-based projects would better support students' understanding of the content. Going back to the feedback portion of assessments in disciplinary literacy, feedback plays a vital role in helping students learn and grow. While we've discussed how disciplinary literacy encourages giving students space to not always have the right answer, this chapter goes a step further by highlighting the educator's role in providing meaningful feedback that helps students understand where they can improve. Spires states, when a student falters on one part of the process or misunderstands one part of the project, the entire project is affected. If we wait until the end to determine how students will be assessed, it's too late for students who had missteps to correct the course. Now, to prevent any misunderstandings or miscommunication, teachers need to provide guidance and support throughout the project, not just at the end, and that's where tools like rubrics come in. Rubrics help teachers be clear about the project's expectations and learning goals and explain how they connect to the way students will be assessed. It gives students the chance to express their knowledge creatively while explicit instruction and expectations are given to them. Now, the Woolsey for me, I didn't connect with as much when it came to learning about specifically like the formative or the summative assessments, but I learned a lot about how it will apply to my discipline, which is mathematics education. From Chapter 5 of Woolsey, it says that mathematicians, but not only mathematicians, use deductive reasoning in the construction of mathematical proofs. Now, what I take away from this is that there is always a logical process where a conclusion can be made from whatever math is happening. There is always an explanation, always, always, always. And what Chapter 8 of Woolsey says is that students who could write about what they learned and how they learned improved their mathematical thinking. And I think specifically, I always think about geometry when I think of proofs, and honestly, that is always the class I hear my high school students having the most struggles with is geometry, and I think it's because they haven't experienced a lot of having to explain their math. You know, they're shown how to do it, they got to get the right answer on paper. But geometry forces them to write out these very, very detailed and explicit proofs, aka explaining what they learned. To connect back to what we learned in the Spires textbook, proofs are the way that we can see a student's understanding of the content knowledge. We can see their conceptual understanding. And we can do these things through summative and formative assessments, really making sure that we're checking in with them to make sure they are properly understanding the material they are given, and more specifically for math, that they are understanding the math they are doing, which sounds simple, but when you have to put words and reasoning behind every single step, we have to make sure we're checking in. So, to connect not only these few chapters from this Reading and React, but really summarize what we've been going through the whole entire class, I want to leave off with one quote I really liked from Spires. Additionally, proving ample time and space for multiple revisions empowers students and puts them on the path to creating successful, impactful products as a result of their inquiry. And I feel that this just goes back to what we've been learning the whole class about critical thinking, not just wanting our students to memorize facts, but build their critical thinking skills in a way that will benefit them throughout their entire life. It's not just about math. It's not just about history. It's not just about English. It is about life skills. Summative and formative assessments are how we can truly make sure that our students are understanding the material in a way that helps them apply it to real life and build skills that they will use beyond the classroom.